We're going to have a long conversation about Code Interpreter in the course of this class. So I want to make sure that we're on the same page in terms of some basic terms that I'm going to be using over and over in my videos. And I want to make sure that you understand what I'm referring to when I talk about them. The first one is a prompt. So anytime you go and type in a message in this box down here, this is a prompt. So anything down in the message box that you're sending in to Code Interpreter, that is a prompt. It's the same thing as in ChatGPT or some of the other large language models. Anytime you send them a message, that is a prompt. So up here we can say, please make these images much more stylized by dramatically increasing the contrast and saturation. That is a prompt. Any text that you put into a message and send to Code Interpreter, that is a prompt. Code Interpreter is essentially a wrapper, a set of tools that are built around, you can either think of it as ChatGPT or GPT-4, and I may be using ChatGPT and GPT-4 somewhat interchangeably. But what I'm referring to is that large language model, basically this AI inside the tool that is really good at understanding text, following instructions, doing all kinds of other complex things. Now, if you haven't taken my course on prompt engineering for ChatGPT, you don't have to, but it's a great companion to this course. So if you haven't taken it, I would highly recommend that you go take that because you'll get a lot more out of doing both courses. And similarly, if you've taken the other course and you haven't taken this one, this is a great course to pair if you finish that other course and you're trying to figure out what to do next. But key thing that you're going to need to know is that this text that you're inputting in there is a prompt, and the wording of this text, it makes a big difference. That's the short version of it. The design of the text, what we say and how we structure our words, that's prompt engineering. So why did I not just say, make these images much more stylized? Why did I not number it and say, 1, make these images more stylized. 2, dramatically increase the contrast and saturation. I could have done it that way too. Prompt engineering is basically the discipline of trying to decide, how do I write out the instructions? How do I design the prompt? What is the language that should go into it? Now, I'm going to talk about output. When I go and put in a prompt, you're going to see some output down here. So when it says first, let's unzip the archive to access the images, that's part of the output. We're also going to see output that is this little gray box. We're going to see this little gray box that says like finished working or it has a progress indicator. We're going to see that over and over in Code Interpreter, and that's also part of the output. Now, this part of the output is special. This part of the output is where Code Interpreter is writing software. And this is what I'm going to be referring to as Python code. So anytime I say Python code, I'm talking about the software that Code Interpreter is writing behind the scenes to help accomplish the task that you've asked. So if anytime you see one of those gray boxes, if you go and expand it, this is Python code in here. And sometimes I'm going to tell you that for certain interactions, you're going to want to talk about Python code because it will be helpful in getting exactly what you want out of Code Interpreter. Most of the time, we're not going to have to do that, but sometimes we're going to want to tell it things about that Python code. Now, this whole thing down here is an output, and it may actually be doing multiple iterations behind the scene to produce all of this output. Now, all of this output down here that we see that came as a result of my simple prompt, please make these images much more stylized by dramatically increasing the contrast and saturation. That was my prompt. All of this down here is the output. Now, one thing to note is there is a limit on the size of our prompt. We can't just put a book in there. We can't put 1,000 pages in. Similarly, there's a limit on how much it'll give us out at one time. So there's a limit to the total amount of text that we will get back in the output. Now, we can do more work if it generates Python code and runs that Python code, and we'll talk about that later. But the short version of this is that what we see that gets printed to the screen here, there's a limit to how much of this it can do. There's also a limit just overall to how much work it's going to do at once, and that's useful to know. Now, that's all of the output. So whenever we're talking about Code Interpreter, when I start talking about a prompt, I'm talking about the messages that we're sending to it. When I'm talking about an interaction, I'm talking about how we're what we're saying and under what circumstances to, continue the conversation. When I'm talking about the output, I'm talking about what it does in response. When I'm talking about code interpreter, I'm talking about this overall application. And when I'm talking about, and I'll use these terms interchangeably, when I talk about ChatGPT or GPT-4, what I'm talking about is the AI behind the system that is interpreting our messages and deciding what output to generate, what software to write for us. And when it's writing software, it's writing Python code. So those will be some helpful terms for you to know throughout the rest of this course.